You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Welcome back to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and we have a true honor talking to our special guest today. She is a global change maker, Dr. Daisy Khan, and she is not only an award-winning author, she is a public speaker, and she also is the founder of WISE, the Women's Islamic Initiative in Spirituality and Equality. It's a global platform. It's fighting for women's rights, spiritual dignity, and peace across the borders. So first and foremost, I just want to welcome you, Dr. Khan, to the show, because with over 20 years of experience, you've been able to do a lot of work, important work. So once again, I want to say to you, thank you for your time today. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be with you and your audiences.
And we're happy to have you on. If you're watching us online, we'll have her information on the ticker tape. So let's get started. You have a book titled Born with Wings. And this book is something that I feel that a lot of people will enjoy. Kind of tell us a little bit about a sneak peek of your book and where can people plan to get it?
Yeah. So the book is available on Amazon. It's available at all bookstores. And so it's also available in audio, in my voice. So if anybody is a book listener who listens to their kitchen books in the kitchen, it's the perfect book to get because I'm speaking and there's lots of stories in it. So yeah, it's available everywhere. And I wrote this book primarily because, as you mentioned, for 20 years I've been doing this work. And people wanted to know how I went from having this kind of circuitous path to my leadership, because I was not supposed to be doing this work. I was an architectural designer for 25 years of my life. And then, you know, there are these moments that happen in people's lives that change everything, that reorient your life or redirect your purpose in life. And those are some of the things I can share with your audiences today.
You've been called to be a bridge between moderate Islam and the West. What has been the hardest part of your journey making that happen, and also without losing yourself?
Yeah, well, that's such an important question to ask because I feel like we're still struggling. There are about 2-point-something billion Muslims in the world, and we span more than 50, 60 countries. We are of every ethnicity, every race, every persuasion you can think of. But yet everybody in America thinks that we're a monolith, that we are one type of people. And somehow our entire community gets lumped in with the people that might be criminals, might be terrorists, might be people with bad intentions. So, and this has been going on since 9/11. And some of it even pre-9/11, but I would say 9/11 is what crystallized it. And the struggle is to separate the law-abiding, faithful, extremely contributing member of a society from those that are on the fringes. And this happens to many communities who get lumped in. And so this is not something new to your listeners. Many people who come from minority communities do get lumped in. And so the difficulty is to peel the onion away and to show who are Muslims really, and what do we believe in, and how we are so similar to every other American. And so this work, sometimes we make real progress, which we were making since 9/11 because of the outreach that we've done and going into communities, meeting people, get acquainted. You know, when people get to know one another, all those biases fall by the wayside, right? Because our biases come from just not knowing the people, not having direct relationship, or just hearing what we've heard in the press and the media. So, but unfortunately, since the war in Gaza and the attack in Israel, everything has gotten, once again, we seem to be going back to the same old where our entire community gets lumped in with what's happening with Hamas or whoever. We just get lumped in with with everybody else. And so this is wrong, and this is what I've been trying to correct.
When you founded WISE, I mentioned earlier, WISE Women's Islamic Initiative in Spirituality and Equality, what was the why that pushed you to create this global movement? And when it comes to just bringing more awareness to educating people on what is the message behind it?
Yeah. So again, since 9/11, there was this perception, because we went to war in Afghanistan, and one of the stated goals in the United States foreign policy is to remove the subjugation of Muslim women, because in Afghanistan, women were subjugated by a group of people who had very, limited views of Islam and very outdated attitudes towards women. So it had nothing to do with Islam. It just has to do with the framework of those people and the mindset of those people. So yet, the issue of Muslim women gets politicized every time we go into different countries. One of the stated goals is that we're going to uplift Muslim women. So the problem is that that's not the reality of Muslim women here in the United States. We are very highly educated, enterprising, deeply civically contributing to this country. Like Muslim women have run for office in this last election, and I think about 20 of them won. Just random people who just decided, I want to serve my country, And so separating, it's frustrating for me then for Americans to have this perception that all Muslim women are subjugated, they are oppressed, and they need to be saved, and from their own people. So I wanted to do something about that. And at the same time, I also want to uplift women who didn't have a voice, whose rights were being taken away, like Afghan women are still suffering under the Taliban. So I wanted to do something, and I met this Christian woman, and I said, I want to change the condition of Muslim women, internally as well as externally. And she said, well, good luck. You can't do this all by yourself. She said, have you ever heard of the suffragettes? I said, who are they? I had no idea what the suffragettes were. And I was looking for something that was a faith-based movement, where I could convince people, use the arguments from my faith, that Muslim women did have these rights. And so I created this WISE movement, partly to not only change the perceptions of Muslim women that American public have, but also change the condition of women internally within the community. So that was the impetus for it. And, we just held our first conference and we got together. I invited all the women that I knew that were on the front lines of change. And I realized there were thousands of women like me, all over the globe. And it's a global movement of women that exist in all their communities that have been making change in their communities. So we come together and we strategize with one another, and then we find effective ways to create social change that is truly sustainable.
So again, you listen to Refocused Radio and watching us online. Talk to our guest today, Dr. Daisy Khan. You can go to her website, daisykhan.com. My next question for you is, when you think about the challenges that you had to face head on, especially with the work that you're doing locally and nationally, what do you believe has kept you grounded and hopeful in the face of sometimes misunderstanding and not understanding full the message in the picture?
Yeah, I would say that there are a couple of very key verses in my scripture. And one of them is that trials and tribulations are a blessing in disguise. So what we think is difficult for us at the moment is actually an opportunity for growth. Growth, purification, getting to know yourself, strengthening your capacity, building your agency. All these things come when you are a challenged community. And so I was challenged at so many different fronts that now that I look back, I don't think I would have been as resilient as I am today. I mean, I was always bold and brash. Some of us are just born that way, right? We are blessed to be, bold and brash. But then there are these moments that come at you that, somebody throws you a curveball and it's so hard, and if you're not equipped and you don't know when to duck and you don't know when to take that ball and just pass it over to somebody else. And I think that having all these things thrown at you makes you extremely resilient. And that, I would say, is something that has made the Muslim community resilient collectively in the United States, particularly because we have been thrown so many curveballs. We're used to it, and we get used to it, and we're like, okay, we know what this is. We're just going to bypass it, and we just look at everything on a long-term basis. Things are going to change because we are making the change incrementally. What keeps me going is that I know that I am doing whatever I can within my capacity to create the change. I may not see that change 100%, but somebody else is going to benefit from it and maybe pick up where I left off. And so this way, long term, the community is growing and developing. So that's what keeps me grounded.
With your experience being on multi platforms, very big platforms indeed, including speaking at Harvard, the World Economic Forum, in the Council on Foreign Relations, how do you prepare yourself to speak to diverse audiences, because they range from students to policymakers?
Yeah, well, this is important because I think that some of us who are faith-based, we tend to be inspirers, right? We want to inspire people because our faith teaches us, that there's much more to us than just, we're only here for a short while. And we're going to go on, we're going to move on, our bodies are going to get buried or whatever. And then our souls are going to move on, and whatever is on the other side, we're going to reap the benefits of what we did, or we're going to get punished. So that's our worldview. That's the Muslim worldview, certainly. And that's my worldview also. So, but at the same time, we are encouraged very much to be action-oriented, to fight for social justice, to do what we need, what we have to do, our part in creating the change. And that's why, I love to speak to people about transforming, changing hearts and minds. And that's when I go into like a little church, or I'll go to a synagogue, or I'll go and speak to students to inspire people to take personal responsibility, to change your mindset, think outside the box. And that's that work. But at the same time, what a policymaker supposed to do? How do you legislate change? How do you ensure that every American is an equal citizen? If I'm a taxpayer, then I should be an equal citizen. I should not be treated differently than you. So making some of those demands, you have to speak in the language that they understand, right? And so shifting the core message that you want to carry and putting it in the words and in the framework of how people understand these things, that's very crafty work. So I think my art background has helped me be an artist, at the same time a scientist also, how to make sure that I combine both. And that's what I do. I'm actually I have to applaud myself. I actually am very good at speaking to multiple audiences. For instance, when I was doing work in Afghanistan, I couldn't go in there with a secular framework and speak to religious leaders and say, by the way, we have the Human Rights Charter, you really have to change this. No, I have to use scripture. I have to go right to my scripture and find that piece in the scripture that then is, in sync with the Human Rights Charter. And I have to convince those imams and say, look what this verse of the Quran says about child marriage. Look what it says about women's leadership. They get convinced because it's the language that they understand. So you have to speak in the language of people, and you have to kind of like bring yourself down to the level of the people, or bring yourself up to the level of the people and the way they understand things. So.
Once again, let's on Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Daisy Khan. Dr. Daisy Khan, wanted to say, appreciate you taking time to squeeze us in your schedule today. Keep this conversation going forward. When you think about what you just talked about, talking to spiritual leaders, when you are navigating religious spaces, political spaces, how have you been able to handle being underestimated or sidelined, if you will, And what advice will you give to other young women of faith walking in similar paths as you?
Yeah. Well, I come from a community where women typically didn't have necessarily a leadership space or leadership role in spiritual communities. I mean, it's usually relegated to men, but nothing is preventing from women to take that leadership role. There's nothing in our scripture that says a woman cannot, assume a leadership role in a spiritual community. It's just the way things have evolved over the years. So I fell into this job partly because I had to minister to people who were suffering, who needed mentorship, people who were trying to understand, how can I balance faith and modernity? Living in America, how can I be faithful and still, live the American life or, be a full American? I mean, it's delicate work. It's not, building a uniquely American, Islamic, or Muslim identity is not something that, it's like, you're evolving in a certain way, right? You want to retain your faith, but at the same time, you want to embrace all the values that America has to offer, the values that are in sync with your own values. And luckily for us, most of the values are in sync with one another, or they align with one another. So it's not like we have to take a leap. So I had to do that work. And then I had to step into that role. And gradually, by osmosis, I began to assume a greater role in the community. As I said, there's no restriction. So because I had to step up every time there was a demand. And it all started with small little gestures, like somebody saying to me, well, you're mentoring me for weddings. Why can't you just conduct my marriage? And I'm like, well, I don't officiate marriages. They said, well, why can't you? And I said, well, yeah, why can't I? So I'm a full-time marriage officiant now because of that. And somebody wants a divorce and they have a complicated divorce and somebody wants, a knowledgeable person to explain to them, then all of a sudden I have to step in. So I had to step into this role. So that's why I tell young people, first, get to know yourself. Then get to know what is the purpose of your life? Why are you here? What do you want to do with your life? Once you know, and then keep yourself open for any big challenges that are being thrust upon you by a higher power. And that's what I've done in my life, is I keep leaving myself open and assuming that I'm just a vessel for the change that needs to happen, and I'll stay open to it. And if I can accommodate it, I will. So with that, having that humility that you're not doing it because of your ego or yourself or having that raw ambition versus I have to fulfill a mandate that is being thrust upon me. And I think that young people should be assuming this leadership role if they have the capacity, but you have to build your own capacity first, because you really can't do it if you don't have the skills, if you don't have the strength, if you don't have the fortitude, the vision of what you want to do.
You think about culture in the United States and around the world, people watching and listening, they might feel like they want to say something or they want to do something to encourage support and just look in between the lines and say, maybe we can do something today. What's one thing that they could do today to push back against any hate?
Yeah. Well, I tell everybody that everybody has something within their own capacity that they can do. And the Buddhists have a saying that 1,000-mile journey begins with one step, right? So you have to take the first step. The Quran also has a very beautiful verse in it. It's very short, but to me, it's my guiding principle. It says, a condition of a people does not change unless you change what is in yourself. So before we go on to change everything, we really have to look within ourselves to see what is in ourselves that we need to change. Because once we change that within ourselves, whether we are projecting something or we're changing the negatives within ourselves, then people will react accordingly, right? So change what is in yourself that you don't like, and change in yourself what you want, what the strength that you want to project, or what you want to project to the outer world, because then the outer world will respond to you. The world will come to you and say, yeah, I want that. I want what that person has. So yeah, getting to know yourself is very important before you start anything big.
And what you're saying ties into the next question. When we think about legacy, that's something that any person who's trying to do important work to leave this world better than how they came, that is a very important chapter in how we define ourselves with our lives and what we do. So when you think about legacy for you, what impact do you want your work to leave behind, and not just in policy, but in people's lives?
Yeah. Everything that I do goes back to, when I move on from this world, I want to be able to, I want people to be able to say something that she did that and she really had an impact in my life, or this is the initiative that she took at that time and that really changed something. Or, so this is all, I just want something that benefits this world and that continues to benefit this world, because that helps me in my afterlife. And so for instance, if you give charity and that charity is benefiting some orphans and it's continuously benefiting them and their lives, that's a very good deed to do. If I write books, and I'm writing books because I want somebody to pick up the book 10 years from now and say, wow, this really created an understanding for me. I'm a book reader, so I actually go into books that have been written in 13th and 14th century. And I'm amazed at what great minds we had at that time and the insights that they had. So I'm always learning from other people's books, and I'm always my desire when I pass on, I hope somebody will open up my book and say, wow, I learned something really important from this book. And that's all I want to leave in this world. I just want to leave a little mark, like a little footprint, so that somebody else can say, okay, this is what I got from her.
A lot of people, they judge a cover before they even open a book. What will be your message to those that you feel are not willing to understand or at least communicate and listen? What will be your message to them?
Yeah, I think that, I'll go back to the title of my book, Born with Wings. Why did I say that? Because each and every one of us is born equal in the eyes of our Creator. We have been given the same amount of faculties, and God does not judge by black or brown or skin color. God is the creator of all of us. So we all have the same divine spark in us, and that's what makes us special, and that's what makes us human. And to judge or to narrow down that understanding is to not understand the divine plan. And or to not understand that in the scheme of things, as Rumi has a saying that, we humans are like a drop in the ocean and the ocean is God. I mean, we're all going to go and we're going to dissolve into that giant ocean, and then we're just a drop. So having that humility and understanding who you are in the scheme of things in creation is what gives you the ability to be great. Because then we do great things. Then we evolve people's understanding. And so it's when we are fearful is when our understanding gets narrowed. And I'm worried that right now we're in that stage, in the stage where we are getting very narrow, very tribal, very limited in our understanding. But these are phases. Even in spiritual talk, these are phases. It's the phases of the closing and the narrowing and the phases of the opening. And I think that those of us who are in this work where we are trying to, make sure that the gap doesn't get widened and that we're narrowing the gap, I know that we're going to go back to the time when we're going to honor one another and respect one another as equals, as we have done in the past. And that's what I'm committed to. The work I do is to reach that goal again.
Once again, been listening to I Am Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Dr. Daisy Khan. Want to say Appreciate everything you've been saying on the show today. I want to end it with this last question for you, and that is, you are no stranger to, like I said, very powerful platforms. You've been featured in Time, you're featured in LA and New York Times, to name a few. But if you had one billboard that you would want to display to the world, what one sentence would you put on that billboard and why?
Yeah, well, it's a message of empowerment. We're all born with wings, and none of us need to crawl through life. And so make sure that nobody cuts our wings, because these wings are given to us by our Creator. So born with wings, don't crawl through life.
Well, once again, you're watching I Am Refocused Radio and listen to us online, wherever you get your podcast or radio show. I want to say to our guest today, Dr. Daisy Khan, like always, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to the audience for listening in.